Testosterone, we have a problem.
This is Outside the Manosphere, where two guys with zero credentials dive past the cliches of masculinity and try to become better friends by actually talking to each other. It's weirdly hard, but we're doing it anyway. Join us.
Welcome to Outside the Manosphere. I'm Skip.
And I'm Carlos.
How are you doing this week, Carlos?
I can't complain. I've had a good week. I'm getting more and more comfortable working as a paramedic. Less and less anxiety with every day that goes by. I have realized. I don't know if I mentioned it before. I realized I have never had anxiety before. Did I tell you about this?
Yeah. You told me that. It was kind of jaw-dropping to hear. Like, how have you lived in modern society and not had anxiety?
Well, I mean, I've had anxiety like here and there, but like as a consistent like daily anxiety, that's never happened to me before. And I say that like, and I've talked to other paramedics about it. I'm like, they're like, how's it going? Like, how are you enjoying the job? And I say, oh, I'm looking forward to the day that I don't have anxiety. And they all kind of laugh, like, well, good luck with that, because that's not going away. But I've realized, I've never had like a daily sort of just tension in my body because of what I'm about to embark in. You know what I mean? I mean, I've had anxiety over like, oh, there's this event and I've got to do this thing, and like I'm nervous about it. But there's times where I'm at home and I think, or like my phone will buzz or my watch will buzz, and it reminds me of like the alerts you get on the work phones when there's a call. Yeah. And like right away I'm activated. It's almost like a mini PTSD. I'm activated like, oh, this is a serious call, and I gotta go do this thing. And so I've never had that before, and it's not a fun experience. How are things with you?
Things are pretty good. We're just kind of chilling out. It's the last week of school for the boys, and they basically aren't doing anything. I ask them what they're doing at school. They're like, I don't know. I'm going to the zoo. So they've already turned in all their books and everything. They're just going to class because there's time left. I have no idea. But yeah, it's been a good kind of relaxed week.
All right, well, let's just jump right into this thing here. I see in our notes here, you've got a couple things here. And the first thing is gaslighting. What did you want to say about gaslighting? I mean, we have talked a bit about it, but what was in your mind?
So I actually have, it's three things that I was tying together, which is, to give them more alliteration, I had said gaslighting, game theory, and global politics. But
oh, okay, they're all one thing. Gotcha.
Yeah, they're all one thing. So, but the one place I needed to start is the prisoner's dilemma. And from what I understand, you've never heard of the prisoner's dilemma, which is fantastic. I don't know.
Totally new thing for me.
Oh, it's great. So this is and you may when I start talking about it, you may recognize it or maybe not. The prisoner's dilemma is quickly this: two people are picked up by the police and they've robbed something, for instance, and they're able to either give evidence, like be a witness and rat out the other one, or stay quiet. And they both have this choice, and they're both separate, and neither one of them knows what the other one is going to do. So if neither one of them tell, then they both get away scot-free. If one of them tells on the other, the one that tells has 0 time in jail, and the other one gets 10 years in jail. And if they both tell on each other, they both get 5 years in jail. So acting rationally, if in our kind of godlike presence in this problem, we know that the best situation is for them to work together, because then they both get free. But the way that game theory works, and this is actually like what John Nash in A Beautiful Mind, he got the movie A Beautiful Mind, he got his Nobel Prize in economics because of this math thing, because, well, I'll get back to that maybe later or not. But people act in the way that benefits them the best.
Right.
So the best thing that you can do in the prisoner's dilemma is betray the other person. Because if you betray them and they don't betray you, you still get 0 years. And if you betray them and they also betray you, then you get 5 years instead of 10. So on an individual selfish level, it's best to betray people. And a lot of people are pretty familiar with this concept or this problem.
It reminds me of there's a very popular TV show right now that's been just kind of not syndicated, but like reproduced all over the world, called The Traders. Have you ever heard of that? It's a
Yeah, yeah,
reality.
yeah, yeah.
Same exact thing where you have well, I won't get into the thing, but look it up, people, if you're interested. Same exact thing that where you have people lying to each other, and if they work together, they can come away with like all the money at the end, or one person can steal it all, or exactly as
Yeah.
you just described. It's interesting.
Yeah, and isn't Alan Cummings he's the host?
He's in the he's the American. Well, he's not American, but he's the host for the American version. There's like a
Yeah.
UK version. There's like a Hungarian version. It's like all over the place.
Oh wow, yeah. No, he's fantastic. We watched it just because he was the host, and we enjoyed it.
He's really funny. He's maybe the best host. I think we've watched a couple of different versions of it.
Yeah. So anyways, I'll get into a little brief bit of history because this is John Nash, and like I said, the movie's A Beautiful Mind, and he got the Nobel Prize in economics, even though this was like a whole new branch of mathematics that he started out with game theory, and historically, theoretically, or not theoretically, or rumored. The reason why there's no Nobel Prize for mathematics is because Alfred Nobel's wife cheated on him with a mathematician. So when mathematicians get Nobel Prizes, it's often in some other area because mathematicians develop math kind of without a purpose. And then inevitably, physics comes along or economics comes along and goes, oh, we need that. That's really useful. And they take it. So the way that I got to thinking about global politics and gaslighting is there's another version of the prisoner's dilemma in which you play again and again and again and again and again with the same person. And rational people, while they might have a little trouble at the beginning, soon learn that the best way to behave is to work together because it's not about a one-time thing. It's about a long-term relationship of how to work together so that you get away every time. And that works most of the time, unless one person behaves irrationally and just continually betrays. And then it's in the interest of everybody to betray. And so I got thinking about this for a couple reasons. One is gaslighting. And like a lot of times, this is kind of what we're thinking. There's like this betrayal in the relationship. There's these lies. There's this misuse of trust over and over again. And eventually, at some point, oftentimes, not everybody gets away, but at some point, people often catch on that, you're a gaslighter or whatever. And then you're completely written off and they know, okay, it's best to sever ties rather than trying to work with this individual. And the reason why I got to thinking about this week, without getting too into politics, but just seeing this as like game theory playing out, what we've done like globally, and we've seen it most recently in Iran, is that we had an agreement that we backed out of. And then we said, we'll give you this much time, and we bombed them. And so like we're playing this game of prisoner's dilemma.
So you're talking about the nuclear agreement brokered by the Obama administration that the first Trump administration pulled out of. And then now they were about to be in talks, and then they bombed. Iran.
Exactly. And the same thing's true of like the Paris treaties with climate change and things like that. Or even just telling our other European allies, we're going to give this 2 weeks before we do anything in Iran, and then bombing them the next day. So like what we're doing in a very simplistic sense is we're continually playing this prisoner's dilemma and essentially, gaslighting these. It's sort of like gaslighting. But what's happening is that we're finding ourselves isolated because the rest of the world is now saying, oh, we can't trust this. We can't trust anything you say.
Right.
So we're getting cut out more and more of all these things. And I just thought it was a really kind of interesting confluence of, like game theory and global politics and what we talk about with gaslighting and the way relationships work. So yeah, I just was thinking about that this week. And I was wondering if you have any thoughts on it. And if not, that's okay.
So I hadn't heard of, I understand everything you just said, but I didn't know it was called the prisoner's dilemma. I think on a very simplistic, maybe a more simplistic, but an extremely simplistic way of describing it would be, we are the boy who cried wolf. The more times you lie and you're kind of called out for lying, people are just going to stop believing you. And then you lose all credibility. No one's going to help you. No one's going to want to play with you. Yeah, man. I don't have really anything positive to say about this without going super deep into politics.
Sure.
I agree with what you've just said. I mean, we have. I mean, we lost credibility as Americans before bombing a sovereign nation for no reason.
Right.
I mean, it really was for no reason. I guess I have a fear, and this is going into politics, but whatever. I mean, we just got to embrace our authentic selves, Skip. um, I do worry that now that Iran and Israel have at least what it was today. Today's the 24th. I
Hmm.
think overnight they or just before just before I went to bed last night they called a ceasefire. A big concern of mine is that this is going to be regarded as a huge win for the Trump administration because it seems like at first glance it's like, oh, he bombed Iran unilaterally without congressional approval, which I mean that's changed anyway after 9/11, but like
Yeah.
now they're talking about reverting it back to the powers of Congress, which I hope they do. But I'm looking at it now. People were, the Republicans were divided, and I'm looking at it now as like, well, now everyone's just going to get in line behind him because, like, well, look, this is like a 4D chess move, and
Yeah.
he clearly knew what he was doing. Even his advisors didn't know what he was up to, and then he bombed Iran, and then it worked out because they called a ceasefire. Like that's just
Yeah.
I mean, worst case scenario for me because I think it's just going to give a lot of credibility to like a dice roll
Yeah.
that President Trump himself did. It wasn't like I mean, I'm sure he was being advised, and I'm sure he was told that Iran has no allies at this point.
Yeah.
There's no options for them, and if they're bombed, they're going to submit, which is exactly what happened. But still, I mean, it wasn't. I mean, it was still bombing a country. I mean, like there's
Sure.
that set us back a long way. So, I mean, I guess to answer your question, I don't have a lot to say as far as comparing it to the prisoner's dilemma, and other than what you've already said, that yeah, this
Yeah.
is a this is a problem for our country, and
Yeah.
we're just in the beginning of it. So, like, who knows where it's going to go in the next 3 years?
Well, I think something interesting that you talked about, it actually brings me to a different game theory, which is poker and becoming pot committed. Do you know that term when you become pot committed?
No, I don't. I've never heard of it.
So, like when you bet in poker, you put money into the pot, and there comes a point where you've put in too much money to back out, essentially. And
That's funny.
so,
That's where we're at. Yeah, that's where we're at.
well, it's where we're at. And, people like it's funny that you're talking to me about Trump's. The worry is that he looks like he's playing 4D chess or something like that. For me, and I think for a lot of people, it's pretty clear that there is one person playing 4D chess, and it was Benjamin Netanyahu,
Oh, for
who
sure.
who like he's Trump's been very much into pinning a lot of things, whether rightfully or not, and mostly not, on anti-Semitism, even though he's like having dinners with white supremacists and stuff.
Right.
But
Right.
he's so heavily invested in looking like a winner and looking in control that when Netanyahu did something that was fairly transparently not what he wanted, he had to, because he's pot committed to this image, make it look like he was all in after being very clearly not in it and, and
Right.
upset for a couple days. And it's not playing 4D chess. It's like, oh man, I just got rolled, and now I've got to I have to figure out in real time a new narrative. And so it's going to be that I was in charge and playing this whole thing from the beginning. So I think that's kind of it's interesting that the 4D chess will get attributed to him. But I
It
also
will.
think, yeah, go ahead.
It will in the United States. I think the 4D
Yeah.
chess will be attributed to Netanyahu in Israel. If there's one thing that I actually do believe Trump is being honest about is that I don't think he wanted to get into another war. I really
yeah.
don't. I don't think he did, and I don't think it's because he's this compassionate leader. I think it's because he knows it's bad for his image. And
Yeah.
I mean, and that's my opinion. I mean, you can call that unfair, but that's just my opinion. It's not really backed by anything other than his prior behavior. But yeah, he will be. I do think this is excellent for him. This is the
Yeah.
best possible scenario for that bombing for him.
No, I think you're right. I don't think he wanted to get into a war. And, one of the only things that's been consistent about Trump is his inconsistencies. But this has been something that he has always harped on. It's about not getting into wars and getting out of wars and getting out of these other nations and blah, 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 blah. So I think it's fairly evident that this was not something he wanted and that he kind of got suckered in. And I think the other thing is, going back to that to that game theory is while it does look like Iran has kind of calmed things down, a lot of the intelligence is saying that this has slowed them down, maybe that they've moved most of the things, that probably what they've learned from this situation is to do what North Korea did and go deep underground and not let anybody know that they have stuff till it's over. The other thing that it's done, because we have isolated ourselves so strongly, and it was before this, you were right, like there's already nations that are saying we don't want to take payment in US dollars because the US is too crazy and we can't pin our bets on it. But there immediately after this, Russia was talking about just threw out the idea of just giving them nuclear bombs. We've isolated ourselves so much and we've made ourselves so much known as this betrayer and this prisoner dilemma that plays out on an international scale all the time. Nations are constantly figuring out when it's better to work together rather than go to war, by changing the prisoner's dilemma a little bit. Like we've made ourselves so known as people that can't be relied on that there's no longer any disincentive to just openly, brazenly saying, well, we'll just go on the other side because you guys can't be trusted. And everybody in the world, even people that are on our side, go, yeah, I understand that. Like we've made the people that they're fighting against all their moves going underground, hiding their nuclear program, teaming up with Russia giving them nuclear weapons. All of that in game theory now becomes very understandable to people on a logical level.
It's an ugly world, Skip.
It is, but we've got each other, and that's all that matters.
Before we move on, though, what do you think about the manosphere in relationship to that? Because this is a podcast on sort of bravado and
Yeah.
and manliness. And when you were describing, what did you call that poker term again? Where you're
committed.
Pot committed.
Yeah.
Yes, that could also be a female characteristic, but I think of I'm having trouble articulating, but I think of like Nelson from The Simpsons, where he's just the schoolyard bully, but willing to team up with the older kids who are more aggressive than him when it suits him.
Oh yeah, no, I mean I think all of this only works because of this strong man persona, and we're talking about manosphere strong man, not like a strong individual that makes good rational decisions and is a good leader, but like somebody that he has to appear on the winning side. So if something has happened that makes, just like you're saying with Nelson, if something has happened to make one side look like they're winning, like Israel bombed Iran, and like he doesn't want to be on the outside of that. He wants to be on the side that looks like it's winning. And and I think you're right. Like he's so pot committed to that strong man. I know everything that's going on. I am playing 4D chess, even though I can't like finish sentences properly. Like he's so desperate to hold on to this image because there's nothing else that he has. Like it's very evident that nobody in his life really loves him or has given him love, or he's desperate for power and admiration, and he's willing to fold or flip-flop or do whatever he needs, even to debase himself to a certain extent, as long as there are going to be people that follow him and admire him and will forget what he said 5 minutes ago so that he can look like a winner. And that's what he needs.
I don't even think they're forgetting what they said. They're just calculating. They're also pot committed, and they're like, well, I got to stick with this guy because in the end, I'm going to come out on top. But what's funny is one thing I've noticed with Trump, and I'm conflicted about like this appearing like a Trump bashing excursion, which whatever. But I don't want to isolate anyone. But either way, what I found, there's a correlation between people who just kind of abandon whatever principles, like Marco Rubio, and I haven't seen his fall yet, but people sort of abandon their principles and hitch their wagon to Trump, and not just Trump. And I'll explain in a second. It's almost like he's a star, right? Like an actual ball of gas in space, and they get too close to him and they ruin themselves. Look at like Rudy Giuliani; he's ruined. Michael Cohen, he's ruined. There are law firms that like submitted to him, and they are in the process of being ruined. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
people who cooperate with him are in shambles now,
Yeah.
and I mean, pay attention to that, and you'll I mean, anyone listening, and you'll see it more and more. Like, wow, there are very few people in his sphere that haven't like wrecked their lives by coming close to him. And I was watching a documentary on a guy named Rob Ford. He was a Canadian. He was the mayor of Toronto for a while,
Oh, I
and he
remember.
yeah yeah.
He
So
he
he
was infamous.
yes yes, and he was exactly the same as Trump. I think a little less eloquent, if you can, apply that to Trump. But he, same exact thing. There were, like, I remember something that one of his advisors had said, that he's like, "Oh, I was with Trump. I was with Ford from the beginning." He admitted it when Ford admitted to smoking crack cocaine, and he was on. I mean, he was on video, so like everyone could see it.
Yeah.
He's like, but he had been denying it, denying it, denying it. And then when he finally admitted it, like all of his staff was like devastated because they had been like essentially lying for him. And this one guy, he was saying, I mean, I was with them from day in, day out. I was with them, 14, 16-hour days. I was his ride or die. He's like, so much so my wife left me. I'm like, man, that's exactly the same thing. You have this big personality
Yeah.
who appears benevolent to the people who are like, giving him what he wants, but he just like he's drinking their blood. You know what I mean? And he and
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
sucks
Yeah.
them he sucks them dry, and then they're done.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think you've kind of hit the point with like the star. I'd say like a black hole, even like
Yeah,
there. Nothing survives the black hole except the black hole.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like even a smaller black hole gets sucked up into it. It's part of that first black hole, and I think people are, like Marco Rubio. I think they're calculating that they can, move up, and they do very successfully. He is incredibly generous as long as you're 100% completely loyal to him.
Right,
But I think what he has that others don't is he has a complete lack of scruples or boundaries. And eventually, everyone in his sphere that has gotten burnt has come up against that line that they won't cross. And that's when you get burnt. Like, unless you're able to completely submit yourself, which is, textbook narcissist, borderline personality disorder stuff. Like it couldn't be any more clear. Like,
right,
unless you're willing to completely submit yourself to their version of reality and to what they want, you're burnt, because they do not need you and they do not care. Like,
right,
everyone is replaceable. And that's the thing. I think they enter into that orbit, as you say, and they make this calculation that they're going to be able to skirt the edge and do what they need to benefit themselves, but he doesn't care about anybody else benefiting. So yeah, eventually they get a little too close and they get burnt. That's what it looks like from the outside anyway.
something that's always in my mind is I have I have a big problem with like not necessarily Fox News or OAM. Well, I have no experience. I've never watched OAM or any of these right wing conservative news outlets that have sprang up. I've never watched those, but like I have a problem with like Fox Opinion News, and I know that a lot of
Hmm.
those other news outlets are opinion. I have listened to Fox News before when they're actually reporting the news, and yeah, it's conservative leaning. You can make an argument that it's biased, but it's largely news. They're reporting news. But when you get into like Sean Hannity or even like Tucker Carlson from before he got canned, Bill O'Reilly before he was fired, those are people interpreting the news and telling you how to think. And I'm bringing
Hmm.
them up because one, I hope that anybody listening that hasn't already tuned out because they're Trump supporters, I just want them to recognize that like you're watching someone's with an agenda telling you what to think. Watch the regular news. It doesn't have to be CNN. Watch the Fox
Right.
regular news. Anyway, I'm bringing that up because we're also giving our opinions, and I think they're very valid opinions, but they are opinions. So I mean, anybody listening to us, like, don't base your opinion on what we're saying. Put the news on,
Yeah.
and not opinion news. Don't watch Rachel Maddow. Like, I mean, I agree with what she says. Don't watch Rachel Maddow. Though. Don't watch
Right.
some of these left wing personalities. Don't watch some of these right wing personalities. Watch the news. Read the
Right.
news. Read the Associated Press. Read Yahoo, as Skip does. Yeah, you'll get opinion in that stuff too. But
Hmm.
think for yourself. I think the majority of at least the American population aren't thinking anymore. They're just they're just passively watching and they're absorbing that and they're repeating that, and it bugs me.
I agree. And I think, it's worth noting just a couple of like court cases against Fox in which Fox News, as a defense in a court case, I'll have to look it up at some point when we listen to this later and do the show notes. At one point, they had said that they had tried to defend themselves against false things by saying no one sensible would take what they're putting on some of these shows like Hannity and Bill O'Reilly at the time. Nobody would take them for fact.
Right.
You couldn't sensibly do that. They were basically calling all of the people that watch their shows and believe them crazy idiots. And more recently, because of the Dominion lawsuit with the voting things, like they had to pay $787 million, I
I
believe.
want to say it was in the 800s, but I could be wrong. Either way, it was almost $1 billion.
Almost $1 billion in a settlement for false news. So like it really is to your benefit to, if nothing else, maybe tune outside of Fox News, if nothing else. And there are problems with lots of news agencies, lots of them. But
Well, sorry to interrupt, but the problem with these payouts, because I don't think Fox News lost a civil case. They settled, and they settled on they willingly almost gave $1 billion for all the bullshit they were spewing about Dominion voting, being that the election was stolen via these faulty voting stations, which weren't connected to the internet. They weren't even being used in these areas where they were purportedly being used. Anyway, the problem with that is it also what CBS also settled for their against the Trump administration for their reporting with Kamala Harris. I think they were being accused of like favoritism or whatever for their editing.
Favorably editing a interview. Yeah.
Right, which they were just editing. I mean, well, whatever. We don't know because they didn't go to trial, but they settled. And what I keep hearing is like, well, they've made a calculation, and it made more sense for them to just pay out rather than fight a lengthy court battle, which they would have won. Like, to be clear, they would have won. Same with Disney Plus, or not Disney Plus, Disney. They, I think it was, I don't know if it was Florida or if it was the Trump administration, but they settled also rather than fight them in court, which they would have won. They would. There was no legal grounds to be sued, and they would have won. But they, rather than fight, they paid out. So you can make the same case with the Dominion lawsuit. Like, well, we'll pay $1 billion rather than like, which doesn't make sense because you're not going to have $1 billion court fight. Like that's not going to happen. You might
the
lose.
Bottom line doesn't work.
Yeah, you might lose more than $1 billion. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And I think that's what they were afraid was going to happen. Yeah. But on the surface, they're going to say, well, yeah, we settled in the same way that CBS settled, in the same way that Disney settled, because it made sense, which it didn't make sense. But that's my fear.
Yeah, I agree. I go back to where they called their viewers like basically stupid for believing their radio or their hosts. But yeah, you're absolutely right. And as we've looked at these things, like especially with universities and law firms that have the Trump administration has pursued, we have seen, like Columbia crumbled, and they just kept getting put upon. It was not like they had they tried to make a calculated decision. They were like, okay, we'll bend. And the thing is, with this type of personality that we've been talking about, this big strongman personality, it's never enough. You're gonna bend, and you're gonna bend until you're doing exactly what they want, or they break you. And Harvard, on the other side, has fared not a lot better, but now like it's become much more beloved. Like there's polls on this that people's opinions of Harvard have increased, and they do have an endowment, and they do have people that are trying to come to their aid, at least. And the same thing with law firms. Some of the law firms kind of bent over backwards, and then they found out, oh, this deal that we made, it wasn't what we thought, and they keep trying to push it further and further. Whereas, and this is actually a finished thing, some of the other ones have challenged it, and they've won, and they're free and clear. Because this is what happens. We go back to Nelson in the schoolyard. Like, if you've got a bully and you give them what they want, it's not in their psychology to be happy and call it a day. That's not how it works.
You're not an ally, you're a vassal. That's what that is. You become a vassal of theirs.
That's the thing, going back to, you know, when you talked about their orbit, everybody's a vassal.
Uh-huh.
There's nobody that they care about,
Right.
you know, or that Trump cares about. And that's where it ends up. That's why everybody that gets too close to the sun burns.
Well, and also going back to Harvard, though, they've recently, I don't know the details, but they've recently like opened up channels again with the Trump administration and start talking. And I'm like, man, I guess, I mean, I don't know what their situation is, but like, that's Trump's playbook. He's like, oh yeah, you just twist them and then wait for them to come back. And that's
Yeah.
exactly what Harvard's done. So I don't know. I don't see a bright future for Harvard. I mean,
No.
they're doing exactly what he wants them to do. So,
But they are sort of the nice thing about Harvard, and, you know, they're sort of being, in my mind, benevolent, or at least like principled or something, is that all the focus is on them now. And so there's all these other universities that aren't getting this treatment because Harvard is now the big bad, and they've really like taken a bullet for
yeah.
education and research and science and all kinds of stuff. And I'm not like a lover of Harvard generally, but in this case, man, like if we're looking for the helpers, it's been Harvard lately.
Yeah. And not just that, as far as well, you take the schoolyard scenario where you have the kid who's getting picked on, punches the bully in the mouth, might not have won the fight necessarily, but the bully's gonna like pull back for a second and realize, okay, I can't
Right.
pick on, you know, kids with glasses anymore because the kids with glasses might punch back now. You know what I mean? And everyone saw it. So yeah, at the very least, like other universities, and not just universities, other institutions have watched what's happened and be like, okay, well, we can punch back now. And the Trump administration or Trump himself realizes, yeah, this is very public, and everyone just saw Harvard punch back. So I'll just back off the schools for now, and I'll focus on Harvard for now because I can't back down because I've already
Right.
picked this fight.
Yeah, well, and you know, that's just with the one kid wearing glasses. If all the kids wearing glasses get together, you know, not far be it from me to quote the Bible, but the meek shall inherit the earth. You know, like that's where this whole flaw in this manosphere alpha male thing just completely falls apart. Is it only works if everybody buys in, and buying in is basically being the beta cuck to the alpha male. So you're the thing that all these manosphere people hate, the thing that they're all so against with being owned and being unmasculine. Like there's nothing less masculine than submitting to these authoritarians.
But isn't it funny too how like in this scenario, Harvard and these Ivy Leagues are the meek.
Right. Let me thank you for dragging you into politics and stuff. Like I know that I want this to be joyful and everything, but I also want it to be a genuine conversation with you. And these are the kind, like, I was thinking about this stuff and I wanted to talk to you about it.
Yeah. Well, I think
it was enjoyable.
I enjoy it too. It's not even for me. It's not even about joy at this part because I don't feel like amped up over it. It's just more of like, I think the real problematic people, not that they're listening to our podcast, but the real problematic people are just going to tune out at that point. The moment we start bashing Trump, it's like, well, I'll just not listen anymore.
Sure.
And it's not for me. It's not even like, oh, we're going to lose an audience. It's like, no, well, like the whole, not the purpose of this thing, but the whole purpose of the manosphere aspect of it is to maybe is to change the narrative a little bit. And I don't know. We weren't being hateful or anything. We were just
I actually find that, you know, the fact that we're talking about the manosphere, it actually is nice because it adds like a lens for me, like a particular point of view where I'm able to think about it in a less amped up way. I'm able to think about it like as these illustrations of the manosphere or as game theory or something like that.
Right.
Where in my personal life I might be like, but but then we get to have like actually a thoughtful conversation about it, which is pretty cool. And yeah, I try not to like bad mouth too much, but I feel like I want to be able to talk about it honestly, and there are some things that you have to say. Are you ready to fall in love?
Boy, am I.
All right. If you could change anything about the way you were raised, what would it be?
Ooh, this is gonna cut deeper for. I don't think my mom listens, but if she did, let's see. Let me think here. What would I change about the way I was raised? We were raised very poor, very poor. We were raised in a single household by no fault of my mother's. I guess. I mean, everyone's going to complain about some aspect of the way they were raised. I would seek a little more direction. I think I got a lot of you got to go to school. You got to go to school. You got to go to school. Because we don't want you to struggle like we have. We don't want you to struggle like we have. I mean, I've struggled my whole life. Like everyone struggles, but I never really understood what that meant. Like you got to go to school. It was just this vague direction that I was given. Maybe I got a couple. Let me think here. I definitely would have liked to have been more involved with like activities. Like we were just wild. Like just like you, we were latchkey
Mhm.
kids. We were out from when the sun came up to the sun went down. In many cases, long after the sun went down, we were still like miles from home. But maybe some organized sports or some kind of like camp activity. I think you have a question here. Did I ever go to camp? I never went to camp. We never had any sort of like organized activities. We never went on vacations. That's all negative stuff. There's some positive things. Just to balance it out, I was raised by a very very loving mother. I never had any insecurities about like where home was or who my protector was or anything like that. But I guess maybe a little more structure. I guess that's probably the umbrella thing I'd say. I wish I had a little more structure growing up. I think maybe I'd be less scatterbrained now. Maybe a little more. Um, wouldn't have taken me X amount of years to like find a career that I finally have found. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, there's things. As always, I listen to your answers, and it makes me think more deeply about my own. Your first reaction of I don't know if my mom listens to this is the same thing, but I
Yeah.
think I'm gonna like you start to think about as you talk more in depth about some of these things. Yeah, so like I was a latchkey kid, but I really don't feel like I really knew my parents or spent much time with them until I was an adult. So that's definitely something I would have changed. But one of the things that I mean, it's interesting because what you said in some ways it was almost the opposite experience, but we came out so similarly. You mentioned wanting more direction. I feel like that's something that I isn't how it's not about me being raised. That's something I would have liked myself to have had differently. So we did go on vacations and I did have sports and we lived in progressively nicer houses and my parents got nicer cars and things like that. And so very much on the outside and the feeling was that we were doing well. But the only thing I ever heard growing up was how we were broke. We were broke, we were broke, we were broke. And one of the things that I would say is I wish we had lived a little less affluently and been more secure because it's something that has been drilled into me. And my parents are 75 and they're still working because they always traded up and they really they didn't have a lot of money. They just kind of traded up because my dad was raised really poor. And whenever there was anything like in the front yard or anything, he'd be like, "It looks like we live in a slum. It looks like we live in a slum." And he was so into that it needed to have this image of success. And I think as a child, I could have done a lot better with having parents around more and not living in as nice of a house and feeling more secure, rather than moving around and spending no time with people and having a nice house. So yeah, it's interesting because we had like almost flipped experiences,
Right.
but I came out on the other side also without a lot of direction, just like go to school and like no, I've jumped through I don't know how many jobs. I used to have like it was a joke in my family because I'd have like 6 jobs a year for a couple years. Somebody got me like for one Christmas a book called Short Term Job Adventures, and my uncle like just laughed at me and he was like, "Wasn't that what you were already doing?" Like, so yeah, it's just it's an interesting it's an interesting thing. But yeah, I definitely could have used a lot more. I wish I had gone and taken school more seriously and looked for direction more. Even when I got my degree, I kind of just fell into something because I was like, I don't know what I want to do. And the math department poked me and went, "You're very good at math. Come here. We'll give you money to go to school." And I was like, "Money to go to school sounds good." Um, so yeah,
So you reminded me though of something that I definitely would have changed. That just like solidified for me. I would have taken school seriously. I took college and university very seriously, but I remember in eighth grade, like the teacher must have just could probably identify me from the back of my head because I was constantly turned around and not paying attention. And I remember at the end of my eighth grade pre-algebra, it was. I don't know if it's still the same way, but like they kind of pushed you through. So even if you were failing, if you were just failing by a little bit, they push you through to the next grade. And I was not doing well. And I remember at the end of pre-algebra, the teacher was like, "Okay, well that's our last lesson on pre-algebra or something like that." And he said, "You guys are now ready for algebra in high school." And I was like, what?" It's like that's what we were doing. I didn't realize that's what we were preparing for. And so like it's like and that's one example, man. I was a terrible just in middle school. I was terrible. High school, I had no chance. Like I was no way. And I remember when I was about 20, my girlfriend at the time, no 22 because I'd started college. I was telling her about something that I had learned, and she's like, "Oh yeah," and she like finished my sentence. I'm like, "Where'd you learn that?" And she was like, "Oh, high school." I'm like, "What? you learned you learned that for free?" So yeah, that was kind of my first like, "Oh wow, I really wasted a lot of time. I could have learned all that stuff. I could have been way ahead by now." But yeah, I would have definitely changed that. I mean, I'll keep my old answer as well. But
yeah, yeah.
but the whole educational thing was like, I mean, that was my fault. I was old enough to make decisions for myself, and
Right.
I think largely my mom was like underwater with taking care of three kids and a full-time job, and she just trusted us to like make good decisions for ourselves. And we were
Yeah.
we were kids, you know what I mean? We were responsible for the most part. We could tie our shoes and not hurt anyone, but we were like
Right.
a little self-destructive.
Yeah, I mean, like, one of the we love our children and we let them know we love them and we let them know that they're, very smart for kids, but we often will say things like kids are dumb. That's why we have to help you out with your decisions. We're not always quite so cruel and it's always like a joke. It's always like, that's what you do when you're young. You do dumb things.
Yeah.
That's
Sure.
so
Yeah.
like, yeah, don't beat yourself up too much about it, but yeah, I think you maybe you were bored. Like I definitely a lot of my issues in school were because I was bored out of my mind.
Yeah.
You know, so you can end up not being ready because it just moves too slow for you to even pay attention at
Right.
sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think also a lot of teachers even back then were it was they spent a lot of time managing like the bad students, and I was one of those
Hmm.
bad students. So like, I mean, it sucks for the serious students who and the bright students who definitely get bored because you have assholes
Yeah.
like me, who I was a smart kid too, but like
Yeah.
I was a disruption. Like I mean,
Right.
yeah, there'd be all kinds of reasons to stop the class because people like me were like causing a scene or doing something. Anyway, I was going to ask you though, did you guys move around a lot, or did you have like a stable house that you pretty much stayed in your whole life?
We moved around. I mean, like it's hard for me to say because I know a lot of people that grew up in the same place their whole lives. We moved around what I would call a medium bit, but maybe that's skewed because of the people that I knew and like maybe I hung out with people that moved more because of that. But yeah, I went to different kindergarten, different first grade, second and third grade, same place, fourth and half of fifth and sixth, a different place, so we even in town when we were in the same town, sometimes I'd change schools for reasons, but not for bad reasons. Just like it just ended up having that happening that way. But yeah, I didn't have a lot of permanent in it in my life, which is definitely something that has affected how I relate to people as an adult.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think that there's any question there's a correlation between like not having, well, not consistency, but how did you describe it a second ago?
Stability, I don't
No,
know.
well, stability, sure, I guess. We'll call it stability. That there's not a correlation between the instability in growing up and then like walking across America, which I want to get back to, by the way, or
Yeah.
or moving out of the country. You know what I mean? Or
Mhm.
or having 6 jobs a year. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There's got to be a reason why not just you but me we were like that. All right. Well, we came in really hot, Skip, with the with our musings and gaslighting, game theory, and global politics. So let's just call that our main content. And we're already a good hour into this podcast. I want to ask you because I've had 2 people bring it up again. They're curious about your walk across America. And it occurred to me when it came up not once but twice. I'm like, yeah, I guess I didn't ask enough questions because I am curious too, and I don't know all the details behind that. So specifically, I'd like to know what are the circumstances that made you do it, and what was like your day in day out like, and also the length of time, and maybe some things that really stood out for this little adventure of yours.
All right. Well, I'm probably gonna limit my answers because, it was like a 9. It was 9 months. I'll answer that last question first. It took 9 months. It's something that I think we can continue to talk about over time. But yeah, I think a good place to start is that first question of why did I do it? I guess.
Hmm.
And the reason was I was actually in Prague before I did it. I had been here for about 2 years, and I taught a course called a PMC course, which is like people taking a gap year, getting ready to take their English exam for university. And they take class 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. And you share it with another teacher, and you come in. And there were other ones going on in other rooms. And after these 3-hour classes, sometimes, we'd sit around with some of the other teachers doing it from other rooms. And one of the days we were like looking at a map of the world, and just, we're all expats. We're all people that came here to go experience life and see new things. And we were talking about all the places we want to go. And I actually just joked about walking across like Asia. And for a long time, I actually started to plan that and like planned my route from the easternmost point of Asia, which is in like Kamchatka up in the Arctic Circle, to the westernmost point of Europe, which is Cabo de Roca, which is like west of Lisbon and in Portugal. And I figured out that it would take about 4 years to walk that. and I didn't give up on it at the time, but I was like, well, I can't afford to do that by any means, and maybe what I'll do is I'll do something shorter. And I decided, well, there's so much of my own country I haven't seen that I'd like to walk across my own country, and maybe I'll write a book or something, and maybe I can get funded to do this other thing. But like the real reason that I did it was it just kind of stuck in my head because we were just kind of joking about it at that point that day. And I was getting really comfortable in Prague, like really settled. And, I have settled here. I've been here for almost 20 years now. Um, and I just knew in my heart of hearts, if I didn't go out and have some big, stupid adventure, I would always regret it. Like, because I knew it was in me. I wanted to go and do something that felt, I don't know, if not important, something big and some big experience that was outside the norm, where I got to see things and do things and meet people. And I basically just stopped my whole life, and I went, and I thought it was going to take me about 6 months, and it took 9. And I just decided this is my big stupid adventure. This was my moment. I was getting older, and it was my chance. I didn't have a kid. I didn't have a wife. It was a good opportunity to go out and see some things and do some things. So that's what I did.
You were what, 26, 25?
No, I was, so when I started walking, I was 29 and I turned 30
Oh
on
wow.
the trip. Yeah.
Okay. And where did you start from?
I started on Revere Beach in Boston. Maybe I'm getting the name wrong. It's been a few years. Yeah, I started in Boston, and I went down the East Coast to eventually Mobile, Alabama, and hit the Gulf Coast there. And then I went across the South to Santa Monica in California.
And you walked the whole way.
I walked the entire way except for a 20-mile bridge in Louisiana that uh, the cops picked me up and said, "You can't walk across this bridge," and they drove me across.
Nice.
And I've always thought, and there was also a block. There was like a 3-block thing in the town of Bastrop, Texas, that
Okay.
I had gotten like picked up by somebody, and then they dropped me off the next day to like sleeping. I was sleeping at their place, and I was like, "Well, I'm not gonna walk back those 3 blocks."
Yeah.
And then, but then I came back years later and I finished it because
Oh, really?
it just ate at me. And I still sometimes think about just going and finding my route on one side of the bridge and going up the river till there's another bridge that I could have, but it would have added like hundreds of miles. But yeah, I still think about how technically there's that one bridge. But yeah, I walked the rest of it
So
entirely.
you actually, I mean, you crossed the whole U.S.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Nice, man. I
North
didn't.
to south, north to south, east to west.
Nice. That's like not. Yeah. That's more than. I mean, that's more than just like left to right. You
Yeah,
went.
it was just over 3,800 miles by my count.
Were you on the highway or were you on back roads or where were you?
Yes. Yeah, I used roads because part of it was I wanted to meet people and see things. On the East Coast, it's so dense that you can just kind of get by walking on back roads, and then as you move south, you move towards like smaller highways, and then as you move towards the west, there's nothing but like interstate highways at some points. And then yeah, at one point, like in Arizona, the the Arizona Highway Patrol came by and said, you can't walk on the interstate, son." And I was like, "Well, there's nothing else." And they were like, "Not my problem." And you know, so I went into the desert like 50 feet and
Yeah.
just started pushing myself through the desert. And even like there's like gullies that the highway had been smoothed over, but like yeah, it was a lot harder from there from that point. But then that didn't take too long, and I got back out to where I could write.
And you had a backpack, I'm assuming, a sleeping bag, all those things.
So yeah, I actually pushed a jogger, like for babies,
Oh,
like a baby jogger. Yeah.
that's funny. That's smart.
Yeah. So I had a baby jogger, and it was named Cherry, and it was for twins. Or it was like a sizable one, a sizable toddler or something like that, But yeah, I pushed that most of the U.S. and yeah,
Dude, that is so fun. When I think about what you were doing, I kind of because I spent a lot of time. I didn't walk across the U.S., but I spent a lot of time walking as well. And I had a massive backpack on. I had like all my supplies in there, and
yeah,
yeah, and I just kind of when I think of you doing it, I would think of you in the same way. You got a big backpack and you're walking, but that is so much smarter. I mean, I couldn't put like a baby jogger in someone's unless it's the
right.
back of someone's truck, but like, yeah, you weren't going to be hitchhiking, so like, why not? Yeah, just have a wagon with you.
Yeah, it was pretty nice, and there were times, like especially in the West, where I'd need to have like 4 or 5 gallons of water, and there was just no way I was going to carry that in a backpack.
Yeah, that makes sense, man.
So
And then I imagine that was tough going uphill sometime though.
yeah, I still remember like New Mexico. There was just one day where I was going up to like God, my memory is so bad. It's like Cloud Mountain or something like that. It's really high. It's like above 10,000 feet, and it was just a full day of pushing this thing. And by the time I got up there, I was out of water. Like I camped. Didn't have a drop left, and I camped behind a general store waiting for it to open the next morning. And I was just hoping that it was going to be open, and luckily it was. But yeah, there were some long days of pushing that thing up the hill, but it was also really gratifying. Like I was in phenomenal shape, which just feels great. And the nice thing about walking is you'd be in the middle of a stretch, and there's days where you think about like, oh, this is ridiculous. Why am I doing this? I kind of want to quit, but there there ain't no way to quit other than to walk to the next town anyway. So so it's every day was like a little accomplishment, and it was really nice. And there, yeah, I met a lot of amazing people, and I had a lot of interesting experiences that I'm prone to forget. But every once in a while, one of them comes back to me, and it's really nice.
Did you keep a journal or anything like that?
Yeah, I think the blog's still up. I wrote every single day. And in addition to that, I wrote offline as well because I was planning on doing a book. I mean, I must have written over 1,000 pages
Hmm.
while I was walking, but I was too young and my ADHD was too strong at the time to edit, and my writing wasn't strong either. So
Yeah.
it just in the end, for my abilities at the time, I was not up to the task of writing and editing and revising a book. But every once in a while, I think about just like picking, I don't know, 10 or 12 stories and writing about them now. But I don't know. I got enough things on my burners.
Yeah. 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 It's funny, man. After all these years of knowing you, and I knew you had walked across the U.S., and it was always this sort of like cute little similarity that I've always had between us. But I've never really asked you details on it, and it's just so
Yeah.
fun. It's yet again strikingly similar to my experiences. Like everything you said is not new for me. It's like, oh, in fact,
Yeah.
you're just taking me back to my experiences
Yeah.
because even though
Yeah.
I wasn't I mean, I walked a lot, but even though I was hitchhiking primarily, like it was same exact stuff. I mean, the only difference was I was writing every day, but it was kind of pre not World Wide Web, but it was pre like blogs and stuff like that. So I didn't
Hmm.
have anything like that. But yeah, it's a little joy for me to hear these things because it's so similar. Any well, pick or choose or both. Any like super negative experiences or like overly positive that you want to share?
Um, Man, I've had shades of all of it. I don't know if I'd say I had interesting experiences. I don't know if I'd say I had any I had some experiences that were scary. I had some experiences that were interesting, but nothing like bad. But I guess like the one thing that I will say is that I did my mapping on like Google Maps at the time, which was not great. And I would just pick where I was going and I'd ask for a walking route, or I don't even remember if there was a walking route. I think maybe it was just a driving route.
Mhm.
And I didn't care where it went. I'd do that route. And so I had multiple times where I was going into a city or people were asking me, oftentimes like people I stayed with or cops or whatever that I'd run into, would ask me where I was going and I'd tell them. And some of them were like very far lefties, some of them were cops. And regularly I would get told, don't go through there, like don't go through there. And I would always go. And I never had a problem. And what evidently what it was very evident early on was when people said that's a bad area, don't go there. It meant that black people live there.
Right.
And I never had a bad experience. In fact, some of my best experiences were in the places and with the people that people told me not to go to. And that really, I think, fundamentally shaped who I am and how I see the world and how people and are afraid of other people. It was really interesting to me because it wasn't just people that were conservative. It wasn't just, cops that were like, don't go into this area. It was like rich, well-to-do liberal people that were saying this, progressive people as well. But like that fear is, to my mind, is not warranted. It's something that's like something that society puts out there that is, I don't know. I mean, I guess, with Fox News or normal news, even that reports the worst of everything, it's easy to buy into some of these fears. But, people are people. People are people everywhere.
Right.
And I'll say that when I was wearing a sign that said walking across America on my back, people in some of the poorer areas or some of the more minority heavy areas would come up to me just like with just wonderful reactions.
Yeah.
Just like I mean, there was a woman I remember in one of those areas that people specifically told me not to go through. She was like, "You're a miracle. You're a
Yeah.
miracle. You're like Jesus walking through here." And it's like, "Geez, I am far from a miracle." But like that kind of love and that kind of reaction from a stranger
Yeah.
was something that like people had nice reactions other places, but I didn't get that anywhere else.
Right.
And it was really inspiring to just go to areas that people told me not to go to and have wonderful experiences.
Yeah. You reminded me. I remember. I mean, I've had a few little sallies where I've gone
Hmm.
and done kind of adventurous things like that. But in every one of them, just like you said, I mean, it wasn't necessarily like in a minority rich area or like
Yeah.
any space specific necessarily, but in all cases, I would have people like either pull over, not to give me a ride or whatever, to give me a ride or whatever, but just to say like how inspiring. Like,
Yeah.
I guess because I didn't look down and out. I looked like I was doing
Right.
something, you know what I mean? And,
Yeah.
yeah, and I would have the same reaction. People would be like, "This is so inspiring. I can't believe what you're doing, and this is amazing." They'd ask a bunch of questions, and you can see it, like, would it made a big impact on them, and, yeah, that was a really nice thing, very much like what you're describing.
Yeah, no, it's definitely I definitely like to have the opportunity to talk with you probably over multiple episodes at more length about just our experiences on the road because like one of the things that I would always say when people ask me how people were on the road is like you get the best parts of people. You
Yeah,
know, good people treat you wonderfully. Normal people that would maybe be middle of the road treat you well. People that might be mean, leave you alone. Like, yeah, like you get the best part of people, and it's a wonderfully life affirming thing. And so often, just like you said, people are like, "Man, this is inspiring," and you see in so many people, like it was such an affirmation of what I was doing because, like I said, I wanted to go out and do something stupid. I wanted to do some big stupid adventure, and everybody I'd met was like given life by it. They wanted
yeah,
they you could see in them that they wanted to do it. And in some cases like I had to get over, people would buy me lunch or something and I had to get over being self-sufficient because like I started to realize, this is a way for them to be a part of that story, to enjoy this and like allowing somebody sometimes, allowing somebody to help you is a weird kind of gift. And like I know that I've felt that when I've been able to help people in my life. It's like I feel really good that I'm in a position to help somebody that I think is wonderful. Often most of the time it's somebody I know that I'm like, I really love you and I want you to do well in life. But like to get that as even a stranger is just amazing.
yeah. I think that's a really, really good observation. You do get the best of people because I found like just I remember, and I don't mean to make this about me. This is I want to ask you a question about
Yeah.
yourself, but I'm relating to it.
Yeah.
Um, I had so many times where I'd be like in a city somewhere on a city bus, like navigating through like L.A. or San Francisco or Phoenix or wherever, and I'm just trying to get out of the city because I wasn't walking, and nobody was going to give me a ride in those places. I would ask the bus driver like, "Hey, how do I get to whatever, whatever?" And then a passenger would chime in, and then another passenger would chime in, and then I'd be like encircled by people who were trying to help me. You know what I mean? Which
Yeah.
is really
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
cool. I mean, and everyone is just they were just. I mean, kind isn't the word, like, but helpful
Yeah. Yeah.
and just eager to be a part of it. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, it was really nice. It was very much affirming. So, yeah, I once again something else that we have in common that is just, I mean, a jewel in my life. Like, and I sense it's the same for you. That it was just something that was really, really positive, and so many. I mean, there were some negatives, I guess, but nothing that
Yeah.
would have like made me not do it ever again. You know what I mean? And
Right.
well, nice. Yeah, we'll definitely have to deep dive into this because I know we've each had more experiences that were maybe not as extreme, but worth chatting about.
Yeah, I definitely yeah, same thing. I'm very curious to talk more about it. It's almost like I feel like I'm restraining myself all week because I just wanna talk to you, Carl. I just want to talk to you. And I want to talk to you about so many things. So
Yeah, you
yeah.
know what? Often I don't send you memes and stuff. I know I send you a bunch here and there, but like,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Skip doesn't. He's not interested in memes, so I'm not going to bombard him
Oh,
with these dumb
I
things.
love memes.
Do
They're
you?
hilarious. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because you've never sent me one, I don't think, and but I've sent you quite a few. I'm like, it's kind of lowbrow entertainment, but it's fun, and some of them make me laugh. So noted. I will be sending you more
Yeah.
memes.
All right. And I will endeavor to send you more. My wife gets all my Prime memory.
Okay. Yeah, oh, and Jody gets them too.
So I get to wax poetic for a long time, and I'd love to ask you a nice long question, but our listeners, our poor listeners, they need to move on with their day. All three of them. So I'm gonna pick something short because I feel like we got to share a little bit in that
yeah.
experience as well. So I'm gonna limit this to just what's the best job you've ever had?
The best job I've ever had. Okay, I am going to keep this short, but I have kind of two answers. So the most recent best job I've ever had was teaching English in Prague, not because I found deep fulfillment in it, but because I was completely independent and I was sustaining myself. I had a really nice little office with a really sweet little view. I had a list of clients that I'd had for years. They kept coming back, which was nice. I kind of charged a lot, which was also nice. And I didn't have to answer to anyone. I could take the day off. I could do whatever I wanted, and that was awesome. So that was not necessarily. In fact, that was one of the reasons why I wanted to leave Prague, because I wasn't satisfied doing that. But as far as the freedom that it entailed, that was really nice. So that was one of my best jobs. But before that, I worked at a college in Austin, Austin Community College, and I was tutoring composition. And at the time, I was really confident in French. So I was teaching, or not teaching, tutoring French as well. And I worked there for a few years, and I really, really, really enjoyed it because I couldn't sustain myself with that job because it was a part-time job. They weren't handing out full-time, so it wasn't something. I didn't make a ton of money there either. So it was actually limiting my progress because I needed a full-time job, but I didn't want to let go of this one. So it was kind of getting in the way. I didn't want to have two jobs, but I hung on to it for a long time. But all my coworkers, I had a coworker from Vietnam who was like missing fingers because he was like a prisoner of North Vietnamese, and his job was to sweep for mines, and they would blow up. And but he was a really nice man. I had a physicist from Spain. He was retired, brilliant man. Mathematician from Poland. My boss was from France. There's a woman from Bangladesh. There's a woman from Peru. Just It was a worldly place to be, and everybody there was just brilliant. I mean, it was like having the internet in real time, because if I had a question, I could find somebody there who would answer it, and answer it well. So it was a really, really healthy place to be. And then on top of that, the students that would come in, it was a free service that the college had. That we had like this big room, it was on the 7th floor. You could have a really sweet view of like the hill country in Austin. And the students would come in, and they would need help with writing composition or understanding some aspect of like a short story, whatever, or French help. And it was really, really nice watching them sort of come into themselves. There was one student in particular. She wasn't young. She was in her 50s. She was a recovering heroin addict. And just, I remember my experience going to higher education, and like just the world kind of opening up for me and being like, wow, there's so much to learn, and just growing so significantly from that. And this woman in particular, watching the exact same sort of flowering in her middle age, and from
Yeah.
all the shit that she had dealt with in her life, just watching her sort of like her mind open up. It was absolutely like you can't buy that experience, and there's
Yeah.
no amount of I mean, I would have done that for free if I could have, you know what I mean? It was just so rewarding, and they were so thankful. And watching them understanding a concept, and then reproducing it, and then taking it with them, oh man, that's what education is all about. And if you're
Yeah.
doing it right, it is extremely satisfying. And yeah, that was, I mean, hands down, that was my best job. The Prague one was cool because I was just being selfish, and I liked having money and freedom. But just the reward that I got as a tutor, not even a teacher, just like tutoring what the teachers were already providing for these students. One other student, real quick, I remember he was right out of the military. He was very much a yes sir kind of guy, yes sir, yes sir. And I wasn't that much older than him, but he was like yes sir, yes sir. And kept getting his papers back from his teacher, and they was like covered in red. And I understood how these teachers work, because I mean, this teacher in particular, yes, but like all of them are like this. His paper was okay. We worked on it. It
Mhm.
got better and better and better. He would submit it. It would come back covered in red again. And he was getting so frustrated. He's like, I don't understand what I'm doing wrong. He's like, you tell me to do something, he tells me to do something, I do it, and then it comes back and there's still a million problems wrong. And I was saying, look, man, take this as a compliment because your teacher is seeing potential and he's building you up. Like everything that he's doing and that I'm helping you with here, it's because you're capable of doing better and better and better. You're never going to have a perfect paper. You keep bringing something into me. I'm always going to find something wrong with it. Always. And your teacher's the same way. And the only reason that it's coming back this way is because you can keep doing better and you're doing better. And he didn't fully grasp that until he finished the class and he got like an A, or I don't know what he got, but he was so grateful. He's like, I get it now. And he was just so used to this militaristic, this is what you do, go do it. Good job, soldier. And that's what he wanted. That's what he was expecting.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a math class, that's what you're going to get because there's a formula and you do it. And then and that's not a criticism of math, but like it's very black and white in a lot of cases. And he was expecting that and he couldn't understand why he wasn't like reaching this perfection that he was aspiring for. But yeah, that's long story short. That was probably my best job I've ever had.
Well, I've been in education a long time, and I kind of want to talk about education just because it's so nice to have a conversation like that. But you said everything so beautifully and so elegantly. I have nothing to add. It would be a waste. But what I will say is that for those of you listening and wondering how Carlos was at helping out with composition, I have sent him a story on 1 or 2 occasions, and his feedback is outstanding. It's amazing.
Thank you, Skip.
Without question, it's great feedback that I always treasure. And I wish I could send you more, but I know you're working so hard right now. I can't stand to send you anything so trivial. So, but I really appreciate just your view on education and how good you clearly were at that job. It's really nice for them to have you as well.
Well, how good I clearly made myself out to be. So
it sounds like an amazing place to work with a lot of amazing people. And I think a lot of people never have that. So that's a wonderful thing.
I only wish they could have offered more full-time positions and offered higher pay, because I think a lot of people who enjoy like doing that kind of thing like I did. You know what though? I might not have left Austin had they paid me and I don't know. But either way, it was a good experience and I'm happy to have had it. So
yeah, well, teachers work hard for not a lot of money, and that's why a lot of people don't stay teachers for a long time. One of those fortunate things for us that got to meet you over here.
Thanks for joining us. New podcasts every Monday. And if any part of this show has resonated with you, let us know at Outside the Manosphere, Instagram, or Facebook. Please like, rate, subscribe to the podcast, or recommend us to a friend. We hope you'll come back.